Hi, this is Paul Palmer. Today I want to talk about time. Time is one resource that we can never get back. So, what's the relevance? Well, in pharmaceuticals, we have a lot of activities that we have to do. We set things up, we dispense, we prepare documents, we check things to make sure they've been done right, we go over the results and verify that they've met the criteria, we release the stock, we sell it, of course, develop something new. There's always lots of activity, sales as well, I suppose. And anything that we can do to save 5 seconds, 10 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, 10 minutes can make a difference. If you've got 1,000 activities you're doing every day that are 5 seconds each, and you can automate half of them, well, 500 times 5 seconds is a significant amount of time for you in that day. Now, a lot of us are now working on computers, and the first electronic quality management system that I logged into actually wasn't the EQMS. No, it was actually the ERP system, or was it MRP at the time? SAP. When I logged into it the first time, they'd not really designed it very well, and there was lots of transactions that, as an individual, you had to follow the sequence. And because you were copying and pasting the information that you'd already entered earlier, my thought was, well, why didn't they just use the same source within the database for when I entered it the first time? Now then, the last implementation, the same system, SAP again, that I went into, we spent a lot more time on the development. We had a lot more engagement with the users. I was on the team for a start. So I knew that the quality aspects were going to be covered in detail. And what I asked at every stage was, well, is that transaction necessary? Do you have to have the person involved? And when the person didn't have to be involved, well, that's the elimination of a potential mistake, a potential transcription error, a potential wrong key. Just hitting the key, one key next to the other key instead, makes a big difference, because then you don't have to go back and fix that error. And if you don't have to do the transaction in the first place, you don't press it in the first place, well, we actually found people were saving hours, not seconds, on the transactions that they could carry out. So rather than having to add extra people, we managed to implement with the same level of staff that we had already. And that makes a hell of a big difference. But how do we achieve it? Well, you have to think about it up front. You have to plan. You have to map your process. To save the time, you need to identify where the time's going. You need to look at, well, if we do this and we go through these 10 screens, it's going to take this amount of time. And then as the system grew, you increase the latency, so it increases the amount of time. And just the keystrokes isn't enough to identify the time you're going to save. And it's the same when you look at an electronic quality management system. Plan it up front. Look at the transactions. Look at what goes from where to where. And whenever there's something that you don't have to do, so for example, emails. If you don't need to wait for the email to come out because you have a dashboard on your system that tells you what's next, you can go straight from the activity you're doing now to the next activity, rather than waiting 2 to 5 minutes for an email update. Well, surely that's much more efficient. So why do so many of the electronic quality management systems rely on email notifications? Well, it's because they're assuming that it's going from one person to a different person, rather than somebody that's logged in on a dashboard. Well, that makes sense. But what if that person sat next to you and you just say, oh, I've just sent you this, and then they have to wait 5 minutes for the link to arrive, when they could have just been logged into the EQMS system, had the notification on the dashboard, and actioned it there and then? Well, if they were sat there waiting, it makes a difference. If they're not sat there and the transaction takes the same amount of time, well, maybe it doesn't make a difference. But there's the things that you need to consider when you're doing your design and your planning up front. And that's the big thing about the quality management system anyway. Why waste extra activities that you don't need to do? I see so many people generating forms and forms and forms when really they could have just got on with it with one sometimes. Or maybe the form needed to be redesigned in the layout that meant that you didn't have so many repeats of the same information and you track it from start to end. And then at the end of it all, you've actually consolidated the data that you needed in a way that's more usable. Because when you duplicate so many times and end up with a 100 or 200 page batch record, well, it's not really benefiting anybody because it takes so long to cross check all the references anyway. So, really, what I'm saying is plan before you do, plan before you design, plan up front, spend time at the beginning, and you'll save a lot more time in the long run. That's it for me for today. That's Paul Palmer. Thank you.